This one hurt. This one really hurt. Mariners lose 6-5. They fall to 80 and 76 on the season, and they take 2 of 3, but are unable to complete the sweep against the Texas Rangers. Go over the scoring plays. Gosh, I don't want to. Dylan Moore singles to left to score Justin Turner. It's 2-0 in the, or excuse me, it's 1-0 in the second. It's 2-0 in the third because Big Dumper homers to left. That makes it 2-0. Fifth inning, Victor Robles singles to left to score Polanco and Moore. That's 4-0. And then on a pickoff error, he's able to get home from second base. 5-0 Mariners lead. Sixth inning, Josh Smith singles to center to score Leody Taveras. Not the last time I'll hear Tavares' name. 5-1. And then Wyatt Langford homers to left to score Semien and Smith. 5-4. Seventh inning, Tavares ties the game with a homer to right off of JT Chagua to make it 5-5. And in the ninth, Marcus Semien, the walk-off single to score Leody Taveras, who had stolen a base to get to second. Mariners lose. I'm going to quickly thank Simply Seattle, not because I am unappreciative of them, just because I think we have a lot to talk about. They're the best. Mollywop 15, MOLLYWHOP15, all one word. And you enter that at checkout. And all the great stuff you find at simplyseattle.com. Doesn't matter if it's the Seahawks, the Huskies, the Kraken, Storm, Sounders, and Mariners, of course. You save 15% off your order by entering that code. Link in the description to make it nice and easy. Thank you so much to Simply Seattle, and thank you to everyone who has been using that code. That shows you're paying attention to this, and of course, Mollywop Monday. You're positive. You got help today. You got a lot of help today. The Angels won. You had one team not help you. The Detroit Tigers win, but Angels win. Giants beat the Royals, and the Twins lost a doubleheader. Now, I need to confirm that. Okay, Google, what's the score of the Red Sox game?
Leading the Twins 9-2 in the bottom of the seventh.
So it's 9-2 in the seventh. They lost. The Twins lost. So you got help. You got help from everybody but the Tigers. And honestly, at this point, especially with the Tigers ending the year with high A Chicago White Sox, your hope now is that the Twins and Royals keep collapsing and you pass those two teams. And the way they've played, very realistic. Very realistic. Now, how realistic? We'll talk about that in the next section. But you at least got some help. Positives from the game. Great to see Big Dumper with the homer. Victor Robles with the big 2-run single, and then the stolen base. The impact he makes on the bases, even with, again, the silliest decision I've ever seen a major leaguer make. Just unbelievable how much he's helped the Seattle Mariners. And I'm super excited to see what he can do next year in a full year. Because it's never been a question about talent with Victor Robles. We probably haven't talked about that enough. I know I did when we signed him. This guy was considered the top prospect in baseball not that long ago. Do I think he can hit 310, 385, 431 in a full year? Probably not. Doesn't have to be an extremely valuable player. Julio made some nice defensive plays. We'll talk about Julio in the negative section as well, though. Again, Big Dumper with the homer. Who played a really good game today was Dylan Moore. Now, he probably should have fielded a baseball, and maybe you get to turn a double play, but he made a terrific catch. He had a big RBI hit in the game. He gets on a couple of times. You need him to be that lefty killer, and he did a nice job as that lefty killer today. Are there any positives from the pitching? Yeah, Trent Thornton. Nice job by Trent Thornton. And again, a very high leverage situation. Terrific work. The only one who deserving of terrific work for the pitching. And then we can move on to the negative. I know I usually transition from this with an ad read. Did it different this time. Bryan Woo. So I know he had 5 shutout innings. Didn't look great to me. Did not look great to me. I don't know if he's tiring or if he was just due for some regression or what. Now, it's worth pointing out that the Texas Rangers, in particular in Texas, have just shellacked this dude. So this was one of his better outings against Texas, but there was an awful lot of hard contact and some line drive. Well, line drives, hard contact. Some balls that Julio and Randy got to that could have made the stat line a lot worse. But in particular in the sixth, man, just way too much of the plate. Way too much. And I realize, number one, this bullpen has some issues, to say the least. And number two, the pitch count was low. So I get giving him the sixth inning. I think it was a mistake not having somebody ready to roll. Somebody ready to go in that sixth inning after it got a couple of guys on. And I don't think that's just hindsight, because those first 5 innings, there was a lot of rough pumpkins, even while not giving up the runs. It's not the reason they lost. Well, it has something to do with why they lost, because you blow a 5-0 lead because you left in a starter who was starting to get hit pretty hard based on just pitch count. Wasn't my favorite. I'm not saying you pull him after 5 either. I'm saying you have somebody at the ready to go when those hits start dropping in. JT Chargois doesn't get the job done. Ideally, not the guy you're having pitch in a 5-4 game. You know, supposed to be not a, I don't know what you'd call it, what the exact term would be, I guess I should say, because he's not your high leverage guy. He's not your blowout guy either. But because of how much they've had to work, they're high leverage guys. He has to pitch in that situation, and he doesn't get the job done. Hasn't been great. I like that trade a lot, particularly because they gave up nothing. But he hasn't been great. And then Munoz. Yeah, it's a bummer. He's been so good this year, but he's just not quite at that top 5 closer status just yet for me. And they kind of needed him to be a top 5 closer this year. Heck, they probably needed him to be a top 3 closer. He's really good. Really good. Way more often than not, he gets the job done. Didn't get it done today. Somebody asked me on the old Twitter machine if I thought they should have intentionally walked Simeon after the walk. Or excuse me. So Tavares gets on and he steals second base. Whether they should have walked Simeon with 2 outs. I didn't think of it at the time, so I can't say it's a horrible decision because, you know, if it was a terrible decision in process, in my estimation, I would be thinking about it right away, right? But you could have justified it. Marcus Semien, all due respect to Wyatt Langford and to Adolis Garcia and some other guys, even with his low batting average and relatively, especially for him, slugging percentage, still the guy I fear the most, especially with Corey Seager gone. It's not even close, in fact. I'd probably rather pitch to Josh Smith in that situation, but I can't say I was thinking, boy, you sure need to intentionally walk Simeon here. So just something in mind. Boy, Leody Tavares just crushed them today. Such a mediocre hitter, just did so much damage. Man, having that 5-0 lead, I was feeling so good, and watching all those teams in front of them, except for Detroit, lose. Oh, and you know, the thing is, the Astros were winning when the Mariner game ended. So you're just like, oh, this is bad. And then, you know, it's still bad, of course. But then you think, man, if you win today, if you don't blow a 5-0 lead, you've got a chance with a sweep of the Astros next week to make it a 1-game lead. And again, I've said it a bunch of times. They're probably not going to sweep the Astros. Sweeping a baseball team's really hard. And it's why I can't get super angry about this game, even though blowing a 5-0 lead stinks. Play better so that you don't have to sweep teams, right? Don't make it so that you have to win every gosh dang game in order to be in this thing. And I still think at this point you probably do. The standings right now are, I better pull them up so that I'm not talking out of my, you know what? Okay. 1 week to go. 6 games left. And the Mariners are 2 games back of the Kansas City Royals and the Detroit Tigers. And they're about to be 1 game back of the Minnesota Twins. Okay. The issue is you will not have the tiebreaker against any team. Minnesota is going to have the tiebreaker against the Mariners individually because they won 4 out of 2. Detroit is going to have the tiebreakers because they beat the crap out of the Mariners. I think it's 5-1. Yep, 5-1. And then Kansas City wins the tiebreaker against Seattle, even though they split their series. By the way, I forgot they split. I thought Kansas City won both of those series. Anyway, you're not going to have the tiebreaker against them because even if the Mariners win out and have the same divisional record, the interdivisional record will go to Kansas City. And even if there's a 3-way tie, the Mariners are going to finish 3rd in that, as far as I understand. Now, I had a public school education, and yeah, I'm not that smart. I'm not that smart. So I could be wrong on this. And I would appreciate it if somebody corrected me if I am. But a 3-way tie does not help the Seattle Mariners, and they don't win any of the individual tiebreakers here. Okay. So you have to make up 3 games against 2 of the 3 teams. Let's look at the schedules these teams play. And this is just as much about me, just for my own entertainment, for lack of a better term. The problem is each team plays 1 good team and 1 not so good team. Now, the way the Royals have played, I'm not sure it matters how good of a team they're playing, but they're going to go into Washington this week. And Washington is not good and not trying and just sent down their best player for having a good old time. And then they play Atlanta, and Atlanta will be playing for their playoff lives. So that's good. That's good. But 3 against Washington, not the best advantage for your Seattle Mariners. Now let's take a look at what Detroit has. I think we've talked about it quite a bit, but Detroit has the Rays, who are very mediocre at best, and then get to play the Chicago White Sox. I don't think you're catching the Detroit Tigers. I think the Detroit Tigers might have a playoff spot locked in, and that's crazy considering where they were, guys. They're 82-74 right now. At the deadline, they were 52-57, and then they lost their next 2. So they dropped to 52-59. They traded their second best starter. And ever since, in part because of how many games they won against the Seattle Mariners, and they took advantage of the White Sox and the Angels, teams that the Mariners, they beat the White Sox, but probably should have done better against the Angels, guys. But ever since then, they've been as one of the best teams in the American League, maybe the best team in the American League. Baseball is weird. So you're not catching the Detroit Tigers. The Royals, maybe. And then finally, we've got those Minnesota Twins who just look terrible right now. They have 3 against Baltimore to end the year, but 3 against the Marlins too. Oof. Everybody there gets one of the 3 worst teams in baseball, or close to it. Maybe the Nationals probably aren't that bad, but 3 of the worst teams in baseball, and certainly 2 of them in the 2 worst in Miami and the White Sox. It's hard to make up 3 games in only 6, and you probably got to win out. And oh, by the way, you're playing a team that is you haven't had the best of times against. Although you've won 6 out of 4. The division's done. The division's done. And one of the things that's going to be really hard for me to watch, it's going to be hard for me to watch the Houston Astros, assuming they win one of those games, and they almost assuredly will. It's going to be hard to watch them celebrate the division title against the Mariners. That's been something I've struggled with my entire life. It's no matter who they've been playing. I remember seeing it as a kid. The White Sox clinched against the Mariners, and the Mariners were nowhere close to in contention, and it still hurt. Watching Seattle have an official death against the division, a division you led by 10 games at one point, that's going to be hard. But let's end it positively. These 6 games still matter. They could have mattered more. We could have had more enthusiasm about them. We should have had more enthusiasm going into them. But they do matter. And guys, I have seen so many Seattle Mariners seasons and well before this, and it's not an excuse for Dipoto or Hollander or Stanton or anybody. It's just a little easier to appreciate when you have had the sports fan life that Seattle people have had. We have seen so much mediocrity to worse that it's a little easier for me to appreciate that they're still in this. How much they're in this? Not a lot. Not a lot. Not because of the game's back, but because of the teams ahead of them. But the games still matter. That won't be true if they lose any more than one of their next 6 games. And I think they probably need to win out. But for now, they do matter. And I'm not saying that's good enough. I'm also saying I can't appreciate it. And speaking of appreciation, I'd appreciate you hitting like. I'd appreciate you hitting subscribe. The Seahawk recap will be tomorrow because of work and because of the Mariner game. I didn't get to pay attention to the first 15, closer to 20 minutes, a quarter and a half. Apparently I didn't miss a whole heck of a lot, but the second half was real ugly. Anyway, I will have that tomorrow, and I so appreciate that you guys have checked out those videos as well. Yeah, this was a bummer. This was a bummer. But there's still a chance.